I did. That's okay. Okay, video and audio are going.
No, we got a window. I think the weather, we have a weather window. It looks like.
Got us four and the rest, the three are accounted for.
Melissa's on the.
Melissa's on, I see her, yep. Hi, Melissa. Hi, everybody. Let's start the work session for the Town of Frisco, October 12th, and let's start with a roll call.
Certainly. Mortensen, absent. Aronson, absent. Burley. Fallon,
Here.
Held,
Here.
Incan.
Here.
Sherburne.
Here.
Thank you.
And our first agenda item for the work session is going to be the GAP project roundabout and median beautification discussion. Hey, Jeff.
Council, you have my memo in front of you. If you recall, we had this discussion, 2019, I believe, the summer of 2019, and we had Norris Designs do a preliminary design and concept of the medians. And while it was a very nice design and it looked very good, it was rather expensive at the time. So at the time, council said, okay, let's sit back and wait and see what we end up with when the GAP project is done, because it wasn't fully designed at the time of Norris's concepts. So, well, we're here now and it's going to be substantially completed on Friday, believe it or not. They're hoping to have a ribbon cutting ceremony, I believe on the 25th is what they're thinking about right now. But so what we have out there is basically some dirt medians from the 8th Avenue roundabout all the way up to just before the Recreation Way signal. And then we have two roundabouts that have dirt in the middle of them and a concrete truck apron around the outside of them. And then that's what we've got. They've stamped the concrete today on the median from Main Street to where the project ends. That was always part of their project, to put that stamped concrete back in to match what we had going up Highway 9 towards the interstate. So that's all been finished. So now we are looking at trying to make two roundabouts beautiful and decide what we're going to do with the remaining dirt medians that are out there. So staff thought it would be a good idea to maybe go and take pictures of roundabouts along the I-70 corridor. Let me see if I can get this thing to do a slideshow for me.
Can. Give me 1 second, please. Should be coming up. Maybe it's this one. There we go.
The only thing I need to figure out is how to make it go the other way. Yeah, where's the? Okay, so anyway, roundabouts along the I-70 corridor. This one, I started at Vale, and this is the main entrance to the north side. I'm sorry, the pictures are small. I'm not completely versed in PowerPoints, but it gives you a general idea of what those look like along there. That's quite a bit of landscaping and water intensive. I think that we want to be looking at maybe less maintenance in the future and a lot less water use than what we had there before. There were trees and some things in there that required hand mowing and a lot of water to keep alive in the median. So this was built in 1997. I did reach out to all of these entities to try to get some costs of what they were when they were built, but no cost estimate was given for this one. And then this one's on the south side of the highway. That's the big roundabout at their main entrance. It's a couple 100 feet wide. Ours are nowhere near that. The center of our roundabouts are about 30 to 40 feet wide. So it's not nearly that size of an area. Again, this one was constructed in 1997 and no cost information was given to me. This is the north side, another roundabout on the north side of the main entrance of Vale. Again, built in 1997, a lot of beautiful flowers, water intensive, but it does look nice. And no cost information was given for this one either. We get to Avon. This is the east exit of Avon, north side. This one looks a little bit neglected, but they were going for the xeriscaping look on these roundabouts here. This is a good example of xeriscaping. This one was built in 2015, and landscaping construction only for this one was $74,700. And then this is a real nice one, the main entrance to Avon on the south side of the freeway. This is a good example of art being incorporated into the project. This one was built in 2015, and landscaping only for this one was $106,000. And then here's another one in Avon. They've got 3 in line on the south side of the highway, if you're familiar with that. A good example of larger artwork within the project. You can see the horse statues back there. No cost information was given for this one, but it was built in 2015. And then this is the east exit on the south side of the highway. Very simple, lots of xeriscaping. This one was $85,000 in 2015. And again, this is cost of landscaping only. And that's what we're looking at because CDOT has paid the cost of installing these things. They've given us carrier pipes to get from the side of the highway into the roundabouts for electrical, irrigation, whatever we want to do. That way we don't have to dig the highway up again. That's great. This one is in Edwards. This is the main entrance of the north side. I find this one kind of elegant and relatively simple landscaping. Again, no cost information given, but it was built around 2016. And again, these are just to give you ideas of what, we can do to maybe try to look like a little bit like the rest of the corridor, if you're interested in that. This is the main entrance of Edwards on the south side. I like this one because it gives the town name and logo in the median. I think something like that would be really good at the 8th Avenue roundabout. The County Commons roundabout, I'm afraid, is going to be subject to people launching through it, like the one at Fairview, because they're coming down that hill. They're coming down at 50, 55 miles an hour. So I'm thinking that roundabout needs to be very minimal landscaping, xeriscaping, nice looking, but not too many big things in the middle of it that we're just going to end up replacing. I'm pretty sure we will. This would be something that would be good at the 8th Avenue roundabout because people will already be going slow. They'll be coming out of the traffic light at Main Street, slower, I should say. Speed limit's 35, but they should be going slower and not flying down that hill from Breckenridge. So that's one thing that I thought was real interesting is the way they incorporated their logo and their town name in that. Again, built in 2016, no cost information was given on that one. And here's a close-up view of that sign that they put in. And there's another roundabout down the road from them where they just have the simple logo in that rock wall. Again, 2016, no cost information given. Lots of landscaping on these, grass, turf area that has to be mowed. That's something that Public Works staff would recommend that we try to get away from in the future. Here's Eagle. This is the one that is probably my favorite, that sign that they have right there. Built in 2018. Again, sorry, nobody returned any requests for information on costs. But I think that is a really nice looking sign. I think something along those lines for us that maybe kind of looks like the Frisco sign at the Triangle Park, maybe kind of plays off of that a little bit, might be something that'd be real nice. And then here they've got another roundabout a little ways down the street where it's still the town of Eagle on there. And the way they set these up is that you can see the signs depending on which direction you're coming from. So the first one was coming off of I-70 going westbound. You can see that you're in the town of Eagle. And then these are down where near US 6 on the other side of the river where you're coming up from the south. And you can see these signs saying that you're in the town of Eagle. And then this was just a simple one that they had there's so many roundabouts in that area. I mean, there's two on the north side of the highway and there's like 4 or 5 on the south side of the highway. And they are currently building a new one. Tony, correct me. I think they're in the process of building a new one down on US 6 near Beaver Creek entrance down there, I think.
Yeah.
And they're looking at that one is going to be upwards of $1 million, $2 million, it sounds like. So you can go hog wild with these things, or you can go real simple with these things. So that's the end of the examples that we have. And then I don't know if you want me to share the Norris Designs concepts. I have those on here. I did put them in the packet. That's quite a lot of slides. I don't know if you guys want to go through and look at that whole thing, or if you want to just discuss and try to figure out what we'd like to do. We do need to put lighting back in the medians. And I'm thinking that one way we could do that is to, within Public Works, build street lights that look like the ones on Main Street and put those in. They'd be a little bit different because they'd be 2 arm and 2 light fixtures. But they can still have that same look if your council would like to consider continuing that look down the road and then eventually go north to the interstate. So I'm open, to anything you guys would like to see out there. I wish I had more ideas for you, but town staff would really like to encourage council to think about things that are easily maintained, use very little water, if any at all. And then the lighting would, of course, need to be dark sky compliant, but shine down, and just like our lights on Main Street. And that can be done in-house, just for the cost of materials. We still have the people that are able to build those things, and we still have the tools that we bought to build the ones on Main Street. So that can be done. So, right now, what you're going to have in the medians from 8th Avenue all the way up to Recreation Way is they've seeded it. It's just going to be grass seed. So it's going to be like what you see in the Iron Springs project from Recreation Way all the way to the school, where it's just grass in the medians, and to maintain it, you basically weed eat it. But the other caveat with maintaining anything from the Commons to Recreation Way is that speed zone requires traffic control devices that we don't own, crash trailers, things like that, crash trucks, because it's a 50-mile-an-hour speed zone, which changes the game for any sort of lane closure and working in that median. Once we get to the county commons, then we have the crash rated stuff already for that speed zone, but not for 50 miles an hour. So that's, basically where we stand, and we are open to any ideas. We have no designs. We're back to a blank slate. We've got a clean canvas out there that we can decide whatever we want to do with. We'll be at our cost.
You budgeted $1 million for both these roundabouts.
I'll just throw it out. I mean, to me, it seems to make sense to match the existing with the stamped concrete, and then to give it some pizzazz. I've seen the flag poles going in, whatever style that is, low maintenance. You can change them out so they don't get dull, and we're done. That's just me.
Are you talking the standard, the banner standards that they have going into Breck? Is that
Similar, something
by
like
flag
that, Jeff.
poles?
Yeah,
Okay.
and I did see Norris has a picture of the double-sided lights that you talked about.
Yep.
I think with those lights in there, the stamped concrete, we're not using water. We're not having to get out there and put people in traffic. If we go to the first one, we can make it low. So like we've seen in other places where folks go straight instead of around it. To me, it makes sense just to match the existing and with the addition of some lights and some flagpoles or banners, pardon me.
Can I ask a few questions questions related to continuity. So you mentioned the 55-mile-an-hour speed limit. How much area or distance are we responsible for in that particular speed limit area?
That's about 800 feet of median that's in that, give or take, that's in that speed zone.
In total, we're talking about,
It's almost 3,000 feet total of medians, but you're gonna have to subtract what was already done by CDOT today. So 2,000 feet maybe altogether of medians in the center of 2 roundabouts.
okay. And then who, just out of curiosity, because there is art out there, who maintains the exit at Frisco 203? Is that the roundabout there? Is that CDOT?
We do our best to maintain it.
It's, I mean, because I think it looks good. We've got art out there. It's not, so I'm curious, how much do we spend on that roundabout?
How much did we spend on it?
Spend to maintain it. So in a,
Mainly staff time to mow it, clean it up and make it keep looking nice. It's really not a lot. Most of the maintenance intensive medians are from Main Street all the way to I-70 because of the turf that's in there, the grass that's in there. And those are the ones that are really, and those are dangerous to work on. We're running across the street with a push mower and throwing the push mower up on the median to try to mow it. And, using water to keep that grass and those trees green and nice. So, but the one at that exit 203 is not a very intensive project to work on.
I think that one looks great.
Yeah.
I mean, it's
Simple.
great. It's got public art in it. It's well grown. It's doesn't feel neglected when you come off the highway. So it looks really good. How much of that 2,000 feet roughly that we're responsible for do we have to light? Do we have to light all the way through the 55-mile? Oh,
We have conduits that we can light all the way up to the end of that median at Recreation Way. Staff's recommendation is that we light the areas from Main Street to 8th Street and then 8th Street to the County Commons roundabout as it was before.
okay.
I mean, there's only extra median. If you recall, we had the AstroTurf mound there, and that's where the median ended. And then that's where the lights ended as well. But I think it would, for continuity, I think it would look good to go all the way to the County Commons roundabout with that center lighting. And then stop there, because that was one thing that was discussed in 2019 as well, is council wasn't interested in lighting that hill. And I'm not either, to be quite honest with you. So
I must have misunderstood you because I thought that we were required to light some of it.
required
Okay.
to light anything. We just need to put back what was taken down.
Okay.
And we're not required to do anything with these medians, to be honest with you.
Okay. I
Yeah.
just wasn't sure if there was some kind of, I don't know, CDOT requirement.
No requirement.
Okay, just a couple more questions. Thanks for humoring me. Love the sign that you guys did here at Town Hall and the wildflower landscaping at Town Hall. To me, do that at every roundabout and we're winning. How much does that cost to maintain and how water intensive is that sign here at Town Hall?
Wildflowers are not very water intensive because they're natural to the area wildflowers. So they get drip irrigation, and I think there's one spinning head in there. It's not very much water. I can't tell you how much water because it's all combined into the whole irrigation system.
It's natural, I mean, for the most part.
And it's got the mulch on it, so it doesn't dry out. And that sign, if I remember right, boy, it's been a while now. That was 2016 when we put that in. I want to say that sign, we did some of the construction of it in-house, but the sign itself, I want to say was around $40,000 or $50,000 for that sign.
And then, let's see, I just had one other question, but now I'm gonna forget what it was. Main Street. I lost it, so go ahead. Somebody else fire away.
I'll jump in. Can I jump in? Can you guys hear me?
Yes, we can hear you, Melissa.
Okay. So let me just look at my notes. So thank you, Jeff, by the way, for the presentation. The one that I liked the most is that you showed was Edwards. That being said, I think that all of those along that I-70 corridor are they're they serve a function. And I think the difference and the opportunity for Frisco is that these really signify that you're in our town. And some of those do, but these really are front and center. And so or at least one of them is. And so I really I think that you know, Highway 9, when you drive into Breckenridge, you know that you're there without it even telling you that, hey, welcome to Breckenridge, right? You know that you've arrived somewhere. And I realize there are cost constraints. Absolutely. I don't want to replicate what Breckenridge did. I just I do think that that was beautifully done. What I would like to see out here is to counter Rick's position, respectfully, Rick. This to me, we've been waiting to have this conversation for years, and to do something that really reflects the character of Frisco is done well, is done very simply, not costing a lot of money, but does incorporate symbolically our character, our culture, etc. And so, you know, I actually wish we would have spent a little bit of time going through some of the Norris concepts. I think that these are push ideas. Some of them are really expensive, but some of them are really simple. If you look at the mountain theme roundabout, that is very, very simple. You know, instead of grass, you could put wildflowers there. So I would love to see something like that. And I really do believe it needs to be designed by a landscape architect or a landscape designer, so that the right plants are there, no turf whatsoever, absolutely low or no water, but something that is modern and gets away from that purely functional or kitschy kind of theme. No wildlife statues. I'm a little bit torn about, well, I'm not torn actually. I think that, you know, having a sign that says welcome to Frisco, I'm not, you know, we'd need to see it and put it in the context of the other signs. We've got, you know, the sign, you know, at Main Street, you know, it just kind of needs to be we need to look at the whole corridor. Is that where a welcome to Frisco sign should be? I'm not sure. I personally prefer the approach where, you know, you're here without necessarily announcing it with a gigantic sign that says Frisco. So I would like this designed. I absolutely think it needs to be simple, straightforward, sustainable, but it also needs to have some style to it, and not just a stamped, you know, concrete type functional median. So that would be my preference, and I really think this is an opportunity for us guys. I'd encourage us to not let this go. It's a when you drive into town, it makes a big difference what our medians look like. So that would be my plug for this. Thank you.
Councilmember Sherburne, thank you for that. And I agree. The purpose of bringing this to you tonight is to try to get a general idea of what you would like to see. And it would go to a landscape architect. We would put this out to bid and it would go to a landscape. And I'd like to do that soon so that we can get designing and get moving on this so that when construction season starts, we're ready to do something, whatever that may be. So the purpose of tonight's work session is to just get an idea from council, a consensus, if you will, of what would you like to see? And then we'll start coming back with, okay, here's an idea, here's another idea. So that's what the purpose of this is this evening, is to just get the ball rolling again, basically.
My last question, if I could, it's a yes, it's kind of a well, yes. What happened to the signs that we took down already? Do we still have those?
Signs.
Like we had the Frisco with.
Oh, yeah, they're in the yard. Yeah, we have them. Absolutely. Yes. Yes, we have it. It's sitting in the Public Works yard. Yep. That's the only sign that was taken down.
Thanks, Jeff. I love all of the
examples and everything. That's great for sure. The Norris design plan is comprehensive and excellent, done really well. Everything's in there that we would really need. We shouldn't recreate the wheel. But it's my understanding, well, let's see, first off, I agree with Melissa, right? I'm on that page where, this is the character of our town, especially as you're approaching from the 3 different ways to get in. It needs to be a statement. It should be a statement, like any other grown-up town. So with that, there's a few things like we should have continuity between all of these things, right? Which we don't really have. The Frisco sign at the Triangle is much different than, say, like the Town Hall Frisco sign. I like the Town Hall Frisco sign. It's nice, maybe, with the lighting and everything else, keeping everything contiguous as far as, lighting, signage and everything else is really important. It shouldn't be us that's picking what that should look like, right? That should be some professionals. That goes along with maintaining with a landscape architect and whatnot. So with that, I think it's important that as you get closer to Main Street, we're defining it more so, right? So the lighting might be half as much from the county commons to the roundabout and twice as much or something to Main Street, right? And then same thing on the other side, right? And same with the medians. The median would be not so nice at the county commons, basically, and a really nice medium with a sign or something at the 8th Street, right? It'd be more finished. We'd spend more money on the ones on the inside there. So with that, it's my understanding that if we were to concrete everything, it would cost $1.5 million anyway. So that right there, and this is just maybe the GAP project. I should clarify that because it's not the other end of Main Street. It's not the Elk and whatnot, right? So 1.5 for just concrete would be our starting point, right? And if we were adding or subtracting and whatnot, I think, the reasonable outcomes are kind of that we spend anywhere from 1.5 to 3 million is, to make them as nice as we want to make them, right? Which all gets into, how are we funding this, right? Because we're not just coming up with 250,000 for it. And we have set aside $1 million already for these particular things, right? Which is just the GAP, if I'm not mistaken. But there's crossover. There's crossover with parks. We've got the corner of Main Street with the Triangle, which is now even bigger. And it's a great opportunity to actually activate that area or do something that's like people focused instead of just, a huge grass area. I think in the roundabouts, as you're going xeriscaping and everything, that should be, as natural and the least water possible, for sure. I was told actually, like, if about 100 grand almost per roundabout to just do all concrete, right? If we were breaking it down even more so from that $1.5 million, right? And so, if we were spending on one roundabout at 8th Avenue, maybe we go big there, right? We spend something like 250 or 200 or whatever. And, we take some away from, the approaching areas. I think that would be important. This is these are the visual cues to the town center, leading you to the town center as you're coming in. And again, as a grown-up town, we should fit the part. And this is kind of where that is. I think that's about it. continuity, xeriscaping, yeah, gateways. These are the gateways. It's important. Thank you.
I'll go. Yeah, thanks, Melissa and Andy. Absolutely, I'm on board. I really like the mountain theme that Norris put together. It's simple, forms are simple. And it seems like they'll be easy to incorporate the natural elements into those. And driving down, driving through there, you don't feel like you're driving through like a Burma Shave art gallery thing of forms and shapes. Because I don't think we need to work that hard to broadcast who we are. We're surrounded by natural beauty. I think all we need to do here is make something safe, something simple, and incorporate some of the forms and features that are interesting, but I don't think we need to do anything where people are going to be inclined to park the car, run across the street, and take a picture by something. We want to stay away from that, I think. So, so I like everything I've heard. The ideas about, I think, looking at it from an investment standpoint, as we move away to, I think, Andy, you were alluding to this, to move away from the kind of the core, focus more dollars there on those in terms of that appearance and what we're willing to put into that. And then kind of as we move away, it kind of dissipates a little bit. And as we're going up the hill and we're done, simple concrete, that's fine. Stuff that we can come back to later if we want to. I think part of this for me is really kind of in terms of spending is what the phasing of this is going to look like. Do we need to get all this done in a year, 2 years, 3 years? Is this a 5-year plan to completion? In which case, having this as a responsible part of a capital projects budget is not really seems very reasonable based on budget work that we just did. Question for Jeff: is there any theory or any sense of, in terms of roundabouts, is it better to have something that's more where the visibility through it is better, or is it better to have it more opaque or monolithic? So is there any sense on that?
Reality, Councilmember Fallon, there are regulations to what we can put in there. There's called site triangles
Right.
where that come with roundabouts. So you have to be very careful about what we put in there. So anything we do will have to be in conjunction with and approved by CDOT to do that. So, yeah, it's best to have not necessarily sight straight through it as you're coming onto it, but as you enter it, that sight triangle as you're going around to your left and being able to look and being able to see
Yeah.
what's going on. And if somebody's pulling out in front of you as you're trying to make that left turn, those are the critical things. I think with the size of these roundabouts being a little bit smaller than the rest in the county, if you will, except of course for the one right in Breckenridge at Park and Main, that's a very small roundabout, very tight. The more low stuff we have, I think the better off we'll be. With maybe one feature like a sign in the 8th Avenue roundabout, I really think that the County Commons roundabout needs to be the simple one with just simple xeriscape landscaping, flowering desert plants, if you will. I'm sure a landscape architect could come up with stuff that can grow there. Because that one, I just would hate to spend a bunch of money on that, and then every couple of years it gets annihilated by something, on a icy night, and somebody just goes flying through there. But the 8th Avenue roundabout, I think is for lack of a better term, the size of it's a little smaller. It's a little more cozy. It's a little more quaint. We can make it look good. And I think what I'm hearing is we take some of the stuff from Norris's design and incorporate that into a new design, or just work off of that one. We certainly don't need to scrap their plan at all. I think there's a lot of good elements in there that we could, like the lighting for one thing, we could do that, and then the mountain theme that you seem to like a lot is we can make that happen too. We certainly don't need to scrap what they did, and we don't need to start over. I'm hoping if we go out to bid that they'll put in a bid, and we can continue working with them, but that remains to be seen. So
Well, and I see this as something that easily we can create a foundational space where over the next 6, 9 years, a lot of these elements can be incorporated. And I think to look at it right now, the way in its finished form, the way that it was imagined by Norris, very ambitious, obviously. I don't want to say that wouldn't be great to see 10 or 15 years from now.
Sure.
But I don't think, and I can leave it to future councils to decide if they want to continue to invest in art along that. As long as we leave the space for it, I think in the future, people will make appropriate additions, I think, based on the time. But no, I agree. I think that's good. And thank you for answering. Last question. Are there plans to put, or the banner standards, are those going back up?
They can. I mean, the problem with those is the design of them. Now, those banner poles were not necessarily built like they're supposed to be. They're supposed to be breakaway, especially the one in that median. But because that median was a huge raised median and it would be rather hard for a vehicle to run into it without running into the 4 or 5 foot tall median that was there. If we put a banner pole in the center of that, we can do it and we can make it part of this project and get it designed and engineered like it's supposed to be. But no, those are gone. And one thought that staff had that we've kind of kicked around is maybe instead of a banner on that section of the highway as you're coming in from Breckenridge, maybe one of those nice LED variable message signs that you see in some areas that you can put any message you want on it. Their colors, something like you see at Dillon. I think that one in Dillon by the shopping center there as you're going up Highway 6, something like that we could put in, or we can certainly go back to banner poles. A little story about those banner poles that were on that. Those were very dangerous. And there was one windstorm that the cable sagged and a vehicle caught it while we were trying to fix it. And this was a long time ago, before my time, but these are the stories that I'm hearing that, it was a very dangerous situation there. And that's why it never went back up. And then those were put in with Region 1 being our region. So they were put in properly, but they just didn't, the Region 3 wouldn't allow those to go back up if we did it the way they were. So we could have them professionally engineered, certainly put them back up as part of this project or a phase of this project. When you speak of phasing, I think that's a very good idea. I don't think we need to try to bite all this off in 1 or 2 years. But I think the first phase with the $1 million that you've budgeted for 2022, we take care of design of most of it. And then we get in from Main Street to the 8th Avenue roundabout, and then some lighting down towards where the median used to end. And then that could be phase 1 for this year. And then phase 2 for 2023 or whenever could go on from there and then do the County Commons roundabout. And then phase 3 could go whatever we want to do up from County Commons to Recreation Way. I think that'd be a good way to phase it because you're getting good chunks of it done. And, you're also going to have to keep in mind, which I always keep in mind, unfortunately, is people in the community just got done with 2 years of huge traffic disruption on Highway 9. And our original goal was to get in there and do all this while this was happening, but that didn't happen, and that's fine. So I would want to make sure that we do our best to keep that traffic impact as minimal as we can, because we're going to be doing lane closures so that we can work in the middle of these things. And it could be, a month, 2 months long. So I realize that, it is what it is, but I think that's something that we have to take into consideration. Because for the last 4 years, Summit County community has been dealing with, highway projects. And I believe there's some folks that are tired of it.
Well, I don't think it's unreasonable then to kind of start, if we start with the roundabouts and then kind of look at where that investment's going to be, to kind of start to set at least a preliminary budget for that space, so if you look at that first roundabout and pick a number from a starting standpoint and say, what can we do for 250, and then you start to put the numbers on the next section. And then, at least on the board in the beginning, you can at least have an idea of that's 50, that's not, and then you're like, all right, that's a, pick a number, $1.8 million spend, good. Is that, are we comfortable with that? Or do we sell ourselves short? Do we want to, so I want to just kind of get a sense of, putting a number to that. And then, when people come in to design this, kind of say, yeah, what can you do there with $250,000 to $350,000? And then that one, and if the next one's going to be this much less, how are you going to connect the two? Good, great first phase, because I like that idea, and again, leaving space to develop. I don't want to preclude anything from happening by not imagining it right now, but not necessarily needing it right now.
I think that the $1 million that you have budgeted, I think would very easily take care of design, a refreshing of the design concept for this project. And then with staff building light poles in-house, because those are quite costly if you go buy those. And if we're just paying for materials, I think the $1 million, you could get that lighting in, and you could get that first roundabout at 8th Avenue done in 2022. I really believe that, because we can do a lot of the work in-house to help knock those prices down. If we decide to do some more concrete and stamping, well, we own the stamps. CDOT borrowed those stamps from us to do what the work they did. So we have them. We have guys that do concrete, it's not that hard to do. I know I'm trying to maybe sound like I'm biting off too much to do, but it is possible. It's very possible. And certainly the light poles can all be built in-house, just like they were for Main Street. So I think $1 million, you could get that lighting and that first roundabout done, and then keep going from there.
I want to thank Melissa and Andy for bringing out those ideas. They said what I was thinking. I just made mine super simple. I really like the phasing that's in my head. So are we there?
I have a couple of things.
Cool, right on.
Yeah, if I could. I can't even see. The banners and stuff like that should be left up to the landscape architect, calling out what's going to give us continuity, right? Do we need that? Do we need a digital sign? Do we need any of that? I don't know. I think we leave that to the professionals. And then it's just also, to what extent, what do we need to fund? What part of this is going on our ask for our Washington lobbyist? What are the possibilities there? How are we operating if we get nothing from federal money for this? Then how are we finding the money, and where is it coming from? That's we have to obviously consider that, but it has to be part of our ask for when we do. I think that's basically it. And then, I think the phasing, I think that works. We do have the medians as well. It's not just roundabout, so that landscaping and everything else is gonna spill out to, along the road and whatnot. And, Jeff, I appreciate your guys' ability and all, but you still have to mow the lawn, so that's a tough one. Don't take on too much if you don't.
I would very much like to get rid of every turf we have in the middle of the highway. Someday we will.
Sure.
And
but
that's,
not, but other than that, you still got to go mow Walter Byron Park.
Yeah,
Like you guys
Well-
have a lot to do, and I just want to be cognizant of how
appreciate
much
that. Thank you.
more we're taking on.
Yeah.
How much do you have to hire to keep up with that, right? Just a consideration. there.
Appreciate that.
Yeah, thanks.
Jeff, sorry, if we did nothing, they have seeded it, is that what you said?
Yeah, they've seeded the first phase that they did last year. They've seeded the sides.
Yep.
And I think they've seeded the center median, and then they're gonna do the rest this year. If they can't get to seeding this year, then they'll have to come back next year. That's what they did with the phase 1 of the GAP project, is they didn't seed that until just a few weeks ago because they couldn't get to it. Iron Springs, they got seeded, but that whole part there, they're coming from Recreation Way to County Commons, just got seeded this year. So
So we're talking sides of a highway.
Right,
too.
right.
Yep.
So agree with the phasing, but I wanted to make sure it wasn't just dirt everywhere else that we don't address in year one. I like the transition idea coming into town, especially because we can use natural landscaping from Iron Springs for a good majority of what comes down the hill. Personally, I love natural landscaping. I mean, this year was a perfect example of how beautiful Frisco is with the aspens and the wildflowers. I mean, you just can't beat it. And so to me, where we can, not just seeding with natural grasses, but can we seed with wildflowers in the meantime and kind of try to get that going? I like the concept of, lighting less to more into town. And frankly, I'm a fan of lighting as little as possible, but matching to Main Street certainly. And I also felt like you guys did a phenomenal job coming up with a look and feel of the promenade. And there's no, while that is a look of Main Street, like how can we, regardless of the future of the promenade, like what does that continuity look like coming into town?
Specific look
Just.
are you thinking of with the promenade?
Wood and the iron, the wrought iron and
Okay.
the whiskey barrels.
Okay.
And of course, that tied into the lighting from Main Street.
Okay.
I mean, that whole concept was, I thought was beautiful. And then you couple that with the landscaping, which was a lot of wildflowers and aspens, personally, let's go with annuals, not perennials, things like that. But I just thought that was really well done. So that's kind of where I'm at. And then of course, the opportunity in the future to do art where it's appropriate. And I do like Norris Designs Mountain. I liked all of what they did. So I'm okay with, whatever part of that concept we carry forward.
Concept and refine it and bring it into what we have out there. And the art concept, in my mind, we have this huge canvas now where Triangle Park is. And that we do have the beautiful sign there, Frisco sign. Maybe that would be so that we're not putting art in the middle of the highway that people are going to want to go take pictures next to, which really is probably not a good idea. But that's a perfect place for some art or something to go there in that big, huge area that we now have, which is just going to be grassed at this point. And irrigated just like it was. It's just a bigger area is all it is now. So that's a huge area to be able to do something with.
And I would love more of the natural landscaping over concrete if we had to choose. It's generally less expensive, less maintenance. And I just, you drive between here and Avon in the summertime along I-70 and it's just nothing but beautiful sunflowers, right? Like that kind of idea to me resonates a lot more than stamping concrete. So I'll leave it at that. Thank you.
Pervious surfaces.
Yeah, that
Right.
too. Exactly.
Anyone else? Good, Jeff?
Quick question. I was gonna ask Thad, since they've done so much work, can't we simply extend or amend Norris's contract to have them complete this work? I think we can save time and money if we do that.
For that. Is it otherwise we're reinventing the wheel?
Yeah.
In that instance, there is no contract to extend. That this contract has been gone for years. I think that if you wanted to go that route, I think a sole sourcing might be ideal, but I'll let Thad speak to that because we are under no contract now that we could extend or amend.
Dad, you're unmuted.
Sure. Sole sourcing is certainly allowed by the code. It requires that when approving the contract, the council make certain findings with respect to special knowledge, skill, unique and relevant experience, that sort of thing. But it is certainly permissible under the parameters set out in section 9-3 subpart F of the code, if anybody's taking notes.
Why don't we bring something back to you? I think that'd be a win-win for everything. Sure. And we'll try to articulate what you've said tonight and have you validate that, coupled with an extension of their contract. So we're all on the same page. We'll bring that back at the next meeting.
Makes sense, Jeff? Right, it's all in the Norris.
And we've sole sourced stuff before.
Right.
And I think that it would be very easy to put in a memo that, and justify sole sourcing Norris, because, I mean, why reinvent the wheel? And they've been
Right.
intimately involved in this, and they took, it was almost a year that they spent designing this, if I remember correctly. So, yeah, I think that we can justify that and make that okay. So that's the route we will go.
Great.
And we will have it back to you by the next council meeting.
Awesome. Thanks, Jeff. All right.
Thank you, Jeff.
Thank you.
Item number 2, our long-term rental incentive program discussion.
Hi, good evening, everybody. Hi, Jesse, good to see you. We have some guests as well for my staff report. Some folks from Omni Real Estate. And we'll kick this off. Do some introductions maybe from Omni.
I'm Marie Oley, owner broker for Omni Real Estate. We've been in the property management business as well as real estate sales for 40 years here in Summit County. We have an office on Main Street. And this is,
Hi, everybody. I'm Allie. Emery's also my mother and my mentor, and I work for her. She's great. So been learning the business from her, both real estate and property management side. So it's been good.
So we're actually here this evening really as sort of a follow-up from the last meeting on housing items and priority tasks that we've sort of identified as impactful here in Frisco. And one of those priorities, I was asked to come back as staff with an incentive program for long-term rentals. It was a quick turnaround, so I tried to keep the program simple, manageable, something that we can try and implement fairly quickly here. We'd like to try and target middle of October, by the end of October, and try and get some long-term leases on some properties, considering those being 6 months as sort of a trial basis, and calling this program Frisco Housing Locals. And so the staff report sort of laid out a little bit about that. We're aiming to immediately increase those number of long-term rentals, obviously with the caveat that we might try and convert some short-term rentals to long-term rentals as well. And included as one of the attachments to the staff report was the short-term rental survey that we completed. That was sent to about 636 STR owners, licensees, and property management companies. And we actually received a 72.5% response rate. So that I thought that was pretty good for that. And sort of identified, obviously, one of the biggest barriers I think we knew that was out there was occupancy. Owner using it sort of split throughout the year, and then sort of staggering that with short-term rental stays, guest bookings periodically between that to sort of offset their homeowner costs and expenditures. And so we've been talking a lot about sort of my role and property management. And so we are working with another company to help with that aspect for me. So I've brought on board, hopefully, a partnership and collaboration with Omni Real Estate to sort of help us get this program implemented. Anne might be able to attest a little bit about this, but she's been working with the FERC. Omni actually took over their long-term incentive rental program that really started in about 2016 called Housing Works Initiative. I think about 40 properties have sort of been in that program. And I don't know if you want to talk about that at all, but just knowing that she's got that expertise, she's got that background, she's got that experience to sort of have the insurance, the tenant checks, making sure that the property is okay and protected, which is what a lot of our responses were to the short-term rental survey, as well as folks were a little worried about long-term rentals and sort of the stigma around that. And so what I'm proposing in the program sort of initially is we've got a couple of folks that have reached out to the town directly to master lease potentially as the business, as the employer, and try a trial basis program. Put our own employees in there, could be seasonal, could be full-time, help fill that need for us as an employer. And then potentially with their help, look at doing short-term rental to long-term rental conversions, work through some of those nuances, those details that we really need to fine tune probably, and sort of collaborate on that as we move forward. But initially, we've probably got a few properties. I'm anticipating about 12 beds, a variety of unit types that we could actually house pretty quickly November 1st in through the winter season to really kind of get this program started. Let's see if we can make it successful. Let's see what interest is out there, and then kind of go from there as we head into the springtime. And I think in the staff report, I recommended a proposal of about $100,000 in anticipation that we would use the funding that we've already put into the Housing Helps buy down program anticipated for the 2022 budget, but I think we've got possibly some funding that I could use still for the rest of the remainder of this year. And if it's successful, I might have to come back and ask for more, but yeah.
So in your staff report, it felt a little like we were kind of setting this program up for the town as an employer, but you kind of answered that question in that you do have businesses who are seeking out kind of this master lease. Do you have a number of those folks who have reached out to you at this point, or are you really trying kind of this, you didn't say the word pilot, but a pilot for this winter with Town of Frisco employees?
Potentially. I think it started with just folks directly contacting me as my role as the housing coordinator for the town and said, hey, I understand. I see what's going on in the newspaper. I want to help out my community. I'm not quite sure how much I can help out because I still want to use my place. I would feel comfortable if the town possibly master leased it. So that's what started it. I think as well, a lot of the other jurisdictions were thinking about short-term to long-term conversions, everyone wanting to do a survey, wanting to sort of understand what that might look like. I've probably only had 2 local businesses here on Main Street reach out. But that being said, Ann's website has sort of a portal that a business possibly could apply as the tenant if a homeowner had a property secured. So I certainly think we could broaden the program and not be so focused on only the town. But these few 3 or 4 that I've talked to in the last several weeks, that was their incentive. That was their momentum, was could the town do this? I would back my property and put it into the program if the town did so.
And then what is the contingency for an existing long-term rental property who then sees that somebody else might be getting this incentive to transition from an STR to a long-term rental? Do we turn around and say, yes, thank you for being a long-term rental program. Here's some, we're gonna give you some money too. I mean, there's kind of a fairness issue here with that. So I'm just wondering what you contemplated related to.
Yeah, I have had 2 property owners that have sort of had long-term rentals. That's all they've done in their property, sort of as a business model. They have approached me as the town. They've been mostly renting to either a remote worker or a front range individual that sort of can afford first, last month, maybe even paying a full 6-month lease in advance. Their mindset is, well, hey, could I come to the town and also join this program? And maybe I would charge less in rent to incentivize having a local worker, but would the town subsidize that more market rate benchmark price? I didn't really have an answer quite yet. I said, I'll keep your information and we'll sort of have to see what criteria we want to put into the program. And of course, funding is sort of another thing we have to keep in mind with this program. So I think my approach originally was to keep it more small scale, keep this a pilot. Let's try and have some folks that have never rented or haven't been long-term renting currently, that don't have guest bookings, that don't have Christmas and winter on their horizon, and try and see if we can get a couple more long-term rentals in place, and then reevaluate and reassess this spring.
And then last question, so of the roughly 25% that didn't respond to the survey, perhaps, how many, and forgive me, I did not have a lot of time to dig into even the 75% that did respond, but are you seeing a lot of investment companies coming in and buying up these short-term rentals, or is it really kind of owner, the owner is the homeowner and they're using it for their own use? I mean, of the people who didn't respond, do you have perhaps an estimate or an inkling around whether or not they're
Sure.
owned by people or they're owned by corporations?
Yeah, we have been watching the trend. I mean, we certainly have seen a very high increase in volume of people just wanting to get a license right now to secure having a short-term rental license. I don't necessarily know that they're going to plan on renting it, but there's a fear out there that they may not be able to have one down the road. But I have been monitoring all of the real estate transfer data every month and cross-checking that with our short-term rental program. And I would say the trend in the last 6 months has always primarily been an owner wanting to purchase this, use it as a second home, use it as a vacation property, and offset it with renting to cover their expenditures to own the property. We're not seeing a lot of investors with multiple licenses and sort of dabbling in that kind of industry. I wouldn't say it doesn't exist, but in the last 6 months, the data shows that it's really ownership using it. Yeah.
I have a question. So did you look into the idea, I thought it might have been Winter Park that actually offered other short-term rentals, and I'm just thinking since Omni is in the property management business, in exchange, so maybe it's not the week of Christmas, but something to sort of offer that benefit that they're going to lose out on to people that put their units into the long-term rental pool.
Have you seen anything like that?
Like giving an incentive to cover their week of Christmas because they can't use it. Is that what she's saying?
Yeah, I think so. Melissa, sorry, can you hear
Without
Ali?
saying timeshare, like,
Right.
exchange your car,
Yeah, so
they can use that benefit, yeah.
We haven't really
I
seen-
don't know many details about that program. I had just
I
heard that
don't
a
either.
communities have been doing it so that people, that still want to use their units like 1 or 2 weeks out of the year still have a place to come to, and whether the town offers them a hotel room for that week,
Right.
another short-term rental, it just sort of alleviates that fear of, oh, I'll never.
Dennis, can you come over here?
Like an incentive program,
Mhm.
And we've talked about that in the past.
but we haven't seen it come into play, really.
Can you hear them okay, Melissa?
Yeah. I think, that would be something just to, first of all, let me just say, great work. I want to get something going. I do, Eva. Let's not.
I wanted
think-
to come with something tonight.
I love it. Thank you. And let's not overanalyze and think
Yeah.
too hard about this so that we don't have anything. I say, let's go for it. Let's refine as needed. And that would just be my one suggestion. Maybe a little more carrots to get people, whether it's that or maybe restaurant certificates. I don't know, something, that's what staff is so good at, is thinking of those innovative ideas. So that would be my input.
Thank you. I agree with Melissa. I think actually that, the possibility of doing a long-term lease with an owner's ability to come in and use it, the unit occasionally, however much that is. I think that would be potentially attractive to some of these people. They would like to run it long-term, but they just can't in, the situation that it is. But I appreciate all of the data. You got some good data there for sure. And I think it's good. I think we gotta move forward. How many units is success? I mean, like we put 10 families in, is that good? Or, is it less? Is there, in your opinion, Eva?
Yeah, even if I can start off with signing 1 or 2 leases before the end of this month, I think we're on the right path. Because a lot of these owners would certainly jump ship and become a short-term rental. I think just owner circumstances and firsthand talking with these people, I'm on the phone. we're having a conversation. And just having that socialization and sort of ensuring that, we're here to sort of help. We understand where you're at, and we appreciate that you want to also collaborate in a housing crisis that we're in. And so I think also ensuring that we've got management, we've got a maintenance team, we've got folks on hand to help with these issues and protect and preserve your property as well, but also an incentive to house a local worker. So I think it's a really win-win right now. And again, fine tune it as we go. We're probably going to have some nuances and some details to work through. But I think we're capable as staff at this point with our expertise and knowledge to get us there.
Just one more thing. Do we have a property management company for all the other units that we own and manage?
Yes, my plan is to execute the contract tomorrow. So if Hunter's in town, I don't know if Hunter's in town, but
Appreciate it.
afraid to please say with his signature, but yes.
That's exciting.
Yes, so we're doing that in a phased approach. So that'll be the management company first will take over maintenance and sort of onboarding all of our properties, onboarding our units, getting oriented as we prepare for winterization, and then staggering them taking on management by December 1st. That'll allow me to mesh our leases together, allow tenants to be able to go onto a portal to pay their rent payments now moving forward and not have to write checks, and sort of streamline that through. So we're almost there. There's light at the end of the tunnel. Yeah.
Such an important part. Incorporate into, into managing more, because this is going to be somewhat complicated, to bring together. And, the conversations that I'm having with business owners who happen to own units, and, with property owners who are renting long-term right now, to kind of get to Jesse's question earlier, which is, absolutely, yes. I think you want to motivate, incentivize long-term people who are currently in long-term, because right now, I think a lot of those long-term rentals are going at market rates, and they're going to entities that can afford to bring in traveling nurses, for example. They're going to people who are looking to come into the county from somewhere else, and they're also, because they can operate at that, if you look at $1,200 per bedroom, they can operate at that level fairly easily, much more easily than our local workforce can. Some of those long-term rentals, you put those on Craigslist, for example, 3-bedroom, 2-bath, $3,500 a month. I was talking to a guy today, in 20 minutes, he had 25 inquiries. And it gets, so I think what you want to do is make sure that that's part of the program right away, because one of the first things you want to do is create success stories. You want people to be ambassadors. You want people to broadcast the value of this, not just from a community perspective, but from a property owner's perspective. So if you've got somebody who goes to 3-bedroom, 2-bath, market rates $3,600, and they want to get somebody in there who's making $20 an hour, single person. The situation I'm thinking about right now is, single mom, good job, 2 kids, she's on her own, and $3,500 first last, it's not going to happen. $2,500 with some help on the security deposit, on the upfront money, and I think the town should be in a position where they can help that. So I really think that, to keep it simple, you work off that baseline, like you have in your report, that baseline rental rate, market rate, for some typology, 1, 2, 3-bedroom house. And then you can qualify people under that at the AMI rate. We go back. So that way you're making this, you make this work from 30% to 180% AMI range. From a property owner's perspective, what you've got to have the people who participate in this program who qualify for it understand that they got to be performance ranked while they're in it. So when they matriculate from one property to another, just like they do with short-term rentals, there's a performance ranking that they get. And if they don't have a good performance ranking, and they want to move from 3-month this to a full year lease, single family, well, it's not going to happen if the performance rating isn't good. I think we need to be able to, work with tenants with security deposit multipliers, for example, so that so tenants feel like they're vested in the improvement and the preservation and improvement of the value of the property. And I think those are the kind of things in turn, and as well as that insurance program on the back end, that are going to take a lot of owners over the threshold. Okay? Because right now, it's preservation of value. It's not, it doesn't matter if you pick it up an extra if we're plugging the gap on the $500 a month to get it close to the market, to get it up to the market rate. If 6 months from now, there's $23,000 in property, so to really get people invested in this program, I think you work with people who have good tenants right now. We invest in that paradigm, that rental paradigm, the way it is right now. We get money to them, and it's not going to be that expensive. We can do it either they can write a new lease if they want. They can commit to the program. However, we're going to qualify the properties based on the criteria that we develop. But I think it's really important to have that aspect represented. Not just the focus on short-term rentals is great. There's a ton of capacity out there. Your survey demonstrated how much capacity is available. It's ready. Every person is going to have a different number. We're not in a position to make this market. All right. So as much as we'd like to say, here's how it's going to be, that's not how it's going to be. Every owner who's inclined to do this has got a different number and a different motivation. And we've got to be nimble enough and have a program that's nimble enough to make sure that we can bring those people into the program based on the property they have to offer that we're trying to do. I did not like Winter Park's program. The conversations I have with business owners and employee rentals, it certainly works for certain kinds of companies. It does not work great for companies that tend to have high turnovers. The last thing you want is that property with the guy put it to me today this way. He goes, I don't want to lose a good tenant because he's a bad employee, and I don't want to lose and if it's a bad tenant and a good employee, I don't want to lose him. So and they don't necessarily want to be in the middle of that dynamic. So if the town has an array of master lease properties that are qualified and ready, and they're working with a property manager who has people, then we can put that together. And if a business wants to get involved, I'm not ruling it out. But I don't like the Winter Park program just because it seems to be foundationally based on that. I think that's. But anyway, I really do think in terms of keeping people moving in and out of these shorter term leases, backstopping this program with master lease hotel rooms is imperative. So we've got to have a block of 20 rooms where if it's just moving the tenant out, so people can enjoy the property that they invested in for their Christmas week, and the tenant can go to a hotel room, I think that needs to be up front, so there's a cleaning fee involved, you clean, get flipped. I think there has to be regular inspections. I think the performance ranking for the tenant, the person who's, again, matriculating through the system, I think the better performance ranking they have, the less inspections that maybe they need, and the better multiplier they get on their security deposit. But there's got to be a way to make sure that they're vested, and then to make sure that if there's a breach or they advocate, that there's a significant credit score downside. It has to be, there's got to be something there that when you qualify these people to the program, they're serious about being in it, and they understand what this means to the community to both have them in good housing and to have them committed to a successful program. So I think those all have to be part of the qualification criteria when people come in with their eyes wide open about what their expectations are. So those are some of the thoughts that I have in terms of some things to make it more palatable to both, to people who want to come into the program because they feel like there's support there on the front end. Owners have significant amount of support on the back end. They feel like the property is going to be, the value is protected and maybe even enhanced by the tenant. So I agree. You've done it. This was so exciting to go through this. It's so great to get the STR survey to see how much capacity is actually available there. It's there. I mean, 40% of 600 SDR licenses, in theory, if you do that, and there's potential for a lot of that, you know. But we've got to make sure that the pieces are in place to make it work. And while I'm very anxious to make it work too, I don't want to rush into it and not have success stories.
Right.
So, and I think you're so close, and it's so easy, not easy, but I think at this point, I think you can see how some of these applications later in the program could be so helpful. And I think probably with some conversations with some of Anne Marie, I think it would be pretty easy to codify some stuff to get it on there so that qualification program, people know that they're coming into something where there's some expectations on this side, and owners know that they're protected. So thank you so much for pulling this together, because, you know, finally we have something we really put some money behind. That looks like it's going to translate to instant capacity. And we can talk all day about zoning. We can talk all day about ballot initiatives that they're trying to recast typologies. That's years before that even turns into maybe a couple of years. Putting money here right now is going to deliver capacity sooner than anything else. Anything else we get out of the ground. So if there's not enough, come get more, you know. But making sure that the protections are there, I think will bring more people to the program.
Okay, so what direction are we gonna give after that? Where are you at? Are you with this program, or?
I've been with it before it started. But I think if we're starting with the town officials and Lisa, I think that's fine. But I think you need to be aware of right here at the get-go that, you know, brought up in terms of long-term, we have to have a provision to get long-term into the program, because these leases are going to start turning really quickly. If we want to change the tenant from somebody who just moved into the town and, you know, they're entrepreneurial, and they're going to start their business, and they've got the money to rent this place long-term. We want our workforce in there. If these leases turn, we need that program.
But we're good with the pilot program the way it's been proposed tonight.
I think I'd like to see those, some of these elements that I just talked about incorporated into it. Now,
Sure.
if you have some people who are good to go on board right now, great. I think we can bring these in as we sort through them. But I think, again, you know, get the success stories rolling by making sure people, like, yeah, we came in, we had a problem, but you know what, they were there for us because this was in place.
So we're good with implementation the way it's proposed tonight, with room for bringing on your suggestions as it evolves over the next few months, meaning the security on both sides, expectations on the renter, and security for the owner.
Yeah, I don't want to hold it up. So yes,
That's what
and I think as you're actually, as the rubber meets the road here, as you're talking to people, I think you'll see this as, it'll be pretty self-evident that these pieces are going to.
Is there any temperature with council on if we were to evolve the program? If I got a couple, you know, homeowners who were like, hey, I've been long-term renting, I would like to selectively come into the program and selectively have a local worker be in the property. Can you work with me on the rental rate, back end, subsidize, what have you? Are we thinking new leases? Or are we thinking, you know, where's the backstop? How far forward or backwards would I go if the program was implemented, let's say November 1 or October 31st, or somebody comes with a lease that they've had in place that's still in effect through January of 2022? Do we want to wait till they would get a new lease to sort of go into effect?
Can they not, as the property owner and or the renter, if they both agree, can they not just cancel that lease and write a new one and get in the program from?
That's what I'm wondering. Yeah,
I
you
mean,
know,
I
As
think
opposed to
we-
going
I think
back.
we have to
Exactly.
accept the fact that we're gonna
Yeah,
get
we are.
long-term units today that are interested in doing this to maintain that over time, and we should entertain that. But if they're renting to somebody who's in Denver, like you described, I don't think that's not who we're targeting. We really need to
Yeah.
have, you know, a Frisco focused program, but we should entertain that the folks who who are long-term renting today.
And the-
We
and
have
the-
to expect that we're gonna get.
Frisco workforce.
Perfect,
criteria
perfect,
that
yeah,
for companies should be
great.
should be the same.
And that was the conversation with these two owners that have been long-term investors. I said, when those leases are coming up, let's say 60 days in advance of those lease end terms, come talk to me. We're working on a program. We're going to be evolving this. Come talk to me. So I've been keeping a list of those kind of caveat folks with some of those nuances. But again, I've got a couple people ready to go, obviously with Ann and her team's assistance, to have that security and comfort level for these folks for the winter season.
Eva, I just had one more suggestion.
Sure.
When you market this, I really liked the Winter Park marketing piece because it was really easy to understand. It was very straightforward. I think that if it were done in a way that was like that, straightforward, but also maybe just something to consider. And you all, especially Vanessa, is so good at this, but conveying what an impact this makes to our community. And so being part of this solution and almost like being a local hero themselves, conveying that spirit of how impactful this is for our community may make a difference. I have no idea, but at least get people's attention, I think would be great.
Yeah.
Right on, Andy?
Great. Thank you.
And with that, that completes our work session for the night.
Thank you.
Welcome everyone to a regular meeting of the Frisco Town Council. We've already had our roll call, so at this time, we're going to move on to public comments. Citizens making comments during public comments or public hearings should state their name and address for the record. Please be topic specific and limit your comments to no longer than 3 minutes. Do we have any public comments tonight? Come on up to the podium.
Good evening. Good evening, council. Can you hear me? All right. I'm Julie Coster. I live just around the corner at 108 Creekside here in Frisco. And I'm here in person tonight because I've been hearing rumblings about a 7.5% excise tax to be imposed on short-term rentals in Frisco. As some of you know, that's going to bring our tax up to 18 and almost 1/4%, which is tremendously more than our neighbors around the county. Breckenridge, for example, right now is sitting at 14 1/4. Blue River is at 12.275. I could keep going. But basically what we're talking about is this 18.225% tax would be basically punitive on our guests and on the lodging businesses in this community. You're looking at people who are going through making decisions to travel based on the bottom line fees when they come to our community. So when somebody goes through the booking process, they might say, okay, this nightly rental in Frisco looks awesome. I want to go stay there. But then when they get to that shopping cart page and they see the nightly fee, cleaning fee, any other fees that might be associated with that property, and then they get to tax and they see 18 and almost 1/4%, they're going to bail and they're going to end up going to Breck. They're going to end up going to Silverthorne with that super cute new downtown development they've got going on. They're going to simply choose another place. So basically what I want to say to you guys is, I think it's really important to clarify the goal of this tax. If it's to support workforce housing, we have 6B coming out on the ballot. Isn't that already going to do that? If we need more funds for affordable housing, then maybe we look at spreading this tax out across the community instead of just punishing one industry and one group of people. So instead of putting it all on the tourists, if we can spread it across restaurants and retail and the rest of the community, maybe you just do 1% here or there, and then do 2.5 or 3% on short-term rentals. That would still end up accomplishing the goal, but it kind of shares the burden with the rest of the town. So I just wanted to present some different perspectives for you guys and just kind of say, hey, before you go all the way down this road and say, let's go with 7.5%, I hope you'll kind of look at things and see if there's some other options out there. Thanks for listening.
Any other public comments?
I'm John Forrest. I'm Bighorn Reynolds. So I just wanted to ask, I would like to understand why the Frisco Town Council kind of has it out so bad for short-term rentals in general. It would be nice to hear on one of your housing discussions why you think short-term rentals are so bad and why you think they need to be restricted so much. I'm guessing that when you have that discussion that you're going to say, oh, no, you don't think that. But in listening to all the discussions on housing you've been having over the last few months, that's not the case. At least you're starting to talk about some affordable housing locations around. But all of the discussion about any restriction or paying for those housing units, it centers on taking it out of short-term rentals. But this housing situation we find ourselves in is much more than just created by short-term rentals. We've got people working from home that can come here and buy a unit because they don't have to live in a big city anymore. They don't really contribute anything to the community. We've got people that just want to be in the mountains that aren't going to rent their place. They just want to have something here so they can come. We've got groups of friends down in Denver that all chip in on a rental and get a place up here so they don't have to drive I-70 back and forth. And that's taken away from local housing as well. And just the world's becoming more and more populated, and housing's going to be an issue everywhere. So want to ask too that you be fair with this housing, and that everyone should contribute to the solution, not just short-term rentals. As just mentioned, 7.5% excise tax levy just against short-term rentals is just not fair. Let's create a tax on everything where everyone takes a part and everyone is part of the solution.
Hello, Hayes Walsh, 223 Creekside, speaking on my own behalf as an individual. Had a hot one here tonight, but this one's for when Hunter's here. So I'm just going to talk a little bit and let me know when my 3 minutes is up.
Got it.
You know, this idea that a council can have a better introspect is going to make a better decision in the community as a whole. The council can do no right if the community is not involved, regardless of if you did the right thing, meaning that you put it on the ballot and the majority of people would vote for it. It doesn't come off that way if the peoples don't feel like their voice is heard. Now, we all know I got the petition turned in. It's under review that would require single-family homeowners be a resident to do short-term rental. Seems totally reasonable to me. Maybe not. Hopefully, we'll have a chance to objectively find out. One thing I want to point out is that there's a narrative that people will not convert their homes to long-term rentals. They just won't rent at all. Well, that term long-term rental is misleading because it just means more than 30 days. So what we're talking about is converting homes to seasonal rentals. And if the ordinance I propose passes, it will increase seasonal rentals in single-family homes, and that will increase workforce housing opportunities that are transient. Furthermore, you know, the idea of increased revenue unequivocally equals increased profit is false. Business owners know, and we've all seen it, they're adjusting their operations, limited hours, reduced services, outright closing. They understand that what creates sustainability and viability is efficiency. So maximum revenue does not equal maximum profit. Maximum efficiency equals maximum profit. So this idea that, oh, we can't have people not show up, we can't have less dollars come into the town is just hogwash. We need people to have livability in their lives, their businesses, and there's plenty of money coming into this town. It's not going to stop. If they can operate efficiently, that's how they'll make the best profit. I look forward to when Hunter's back for this one.
Thanks, Dave. Anyone else? Public comments? Anyone online? Public comments?
If you're online and would like to comment, please raise your hand. Not seeing anybody.
Okay. That I will close public comments. Mayor and council comments.
Comment?
Yeah.
I just wanted to thank this body for taking up the issue of family leave for council members. Not just for myself, but for working families who are interested in you know, becoming elected officials in the future. It makes participating in local government that much more accessible for people at all stages of their lives. And I just wanted to thank you guys for that opportunity and the space to be with my family. I'm feeling emotional. And I look forward to getting back to work for this community. So.
Back, Jesse.
Thanks, Joe. Comments? Anyone? Melissa?
No, just welcome back to Jesse. Great to have you back.
Welcome back to Jesse and congratulations on your new arrival, your daughter, right? And you guys have a great family at home. Welcome. With that, we'll close mayor and council comments and move on to any staff updates. Updates have been in the packet and we've reviewed those. So moving on, we're going to go to the proclamation tonight. Let me get my big screen ready here. So tonight's proclamation is Imagine a Day Without Water. The Town of Frisco, Colorado proclamation, Imagine a Day Without Water Day. Whereas the infrastructure that brings Frisco residents an average of 80 gallons of water per person per day and then safely returns water to the environment is essential to the quality of life, environment, and economic vitality of the town of Frisco. And whereas water infrastructure is the lifeline of our communities, a day without water would be a public health and safety crisis, limiting the abilities of safety personnel such as firefighters and hospital staff, as well as businesses and homes to function. And whereas communities and families need jobs, and closing the gap in water infrastructure investment would bring new jobs to our communities and families and raise the household disposable income. And whereas our water infrastructure is necessary for a thriving economy and a single nationwide day without water service would put our entire economy at risk. And whereas America's water infrastructure is aging and failing, and 2 million Americans are living without water infrastructure, often relying on bottled water, potentially living in unsafe and unsanitary conditions. And whereas we can help secure a better future for the millions of Americans who don't have reliable water service today and generations to come. Whereas valuing and investing in water systems provides a path to economic recovery. Now, therefore, I, Rick Inkin, council member of the town of Frisco, Colorado, do hereby officially proclaim October 21st, 2021 be recognized as Imagine a Day Without Water Day in the town of Frisco, which is an organized effort to highlight that water is essential to the quality of life and economic sorry, gang, I got that one messed up, and acknowledge the importance of educating the public about the value of water, and that the town of Frisco is dedicated to investing in safe and reliable water infrastructure and calls on our federal partners to begin much needed funding and innovation to protect and restore our critical water infrastructure. That's our proclamation. Sure. Okay. Proclamation being completed, we're going to move on to the consent agenda and a motion. Consent agenda has been moved and seconded. Please call the question.
Mortensen, absent. Aronson, absent. Burley. Fallon. Held.
Yes.
Incan.
Yes.
Sherburne.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, moving on to new business. Agenda item number 1. Oh, that's the proclamation. Agenda item number 1 is Town of Frisco, County of Summit, State of Colorado Ordinance 21-12, and an ordinance.
Okay.
Oh,
Agenda item number 1 is request for water service.
oh, I'm on those. Yes, you're right. Thank you. Thanks, Jeff. It's the
Thank you.
water one.
Yeah, this is another water one. And thank you for that proclamation too. I do appreciate that. And I hope that a lot of people will take that day and try their best not to use water and see what it's like. Before you tonight is another couple of water service requests for out of town properties. These two are located at 102 Summit County Road 1040 and 171 Summit County Road 1040. This is the road that goes opposite of School Road and goes back into the Duck subdivision. You've received requests in the past, mainly from some Bill's Ranch folks, where there are no water mains to service those properties. These two, however, are different. There is a water main that runs down their street that services the Duck subdivision. So they do have water in front of their properties. However, as always, it's up to council to decide whether we are going to do this. And you've read my memo. You've heard me talk about this time and time again. So, but as I did say a while back, we're going to be receiving more and more of these requests. And with that in mind, and I'm sorry I didn't include it in my memo because I kind of thought of it after I had written my memo, and I spoke with Thad about this idea. There is the possibility of applying another fee to these requests, and that fee could be used to just put in the bank, so to speak, and have for future purchases of water rights to cover these, because all these one-offs don't really have water rights to bring to the table like the county did when we did county commons and some of the other things that we've done. So there is the idea out there, and it should council decide, we can pursue this further and bring back more information. But we could charge, if council would like to, we could start charging these properties that want to get on town water, that can't offer water rights, a fee in lieu of water rights. Now that fee would have to be hashed out. We'd figure it out what the going rate is for a water right for, a third of an acre foot, basically is what you're looking at for per year, per house. And then take that money and just put it away, not even in the water capital fund, start a whole new fund and put it away and have it for a rainy day down the road, 10, 20 years from now, as it builds up, we would have enough money to go out and on the market and purchase some water rights. So there is that. So as I stated, you're going to keep getting these requests. There's no way around it. And it's always up to you to decide to do it or not. I guess as staff, I would like to ask that we maybe hold off on these and pursue investigating the avenue of getting some funding for future water rights and then start entertaining these requests. Because it's going to be more and more difficult for you guys to turn these down. It just really is, because it's going to happen more and more.
Thanks for bringing that idea.
I have a question for Jeff.
Yes.
Why, I mean, my line of reasoning automatically goes to, if they want city services, town services, let's bring them into the town. Let's annex. Why wouldn't we do that?
Well, I don't know that, and maybe Thad would speak best to this, but I think people have to petition. They have to want to come into the town instead of the town bringing them in. So, but I'll let Thad speak to that.
That's a generally true proposition. It doesn't happen to be true in this instance because the property in question is an enclave. That is to say, it's an area completely surrounded by town, if I'm not mistaken.
That's correct.
Those areas can be annexed, or an annexation of those areas, I should say, can be initiated by the town as opposed to the owners. The reasons, I mean, the answer to your general question, Councilor Sherburne, is not a legal question. It's a policy question as to why and whether and the extent to which additional land areas want to be brought within the town.
Well, so I guess what I'm getting at is, as we get more and more of these requests, if you're in the town, you pay a different property tax than if you're in the county. So if you're getting the benefits of being in the town, but not paying to be in the town, what's the trade-off there? And I'm not saying specifically about this property, but just generally, because we're getting more of these. And so as a philosophy, maybe it's you recoup them through a fee or something, but is that really the best approach. And I don't have an answer. I think that, you know, not to jump to my conclusion, but you know, I've said this before, is that, you know, just kind of bringing them in one at a time on a per case by case basis really feels kind of wrong. I think that people inevitably will feel some level of inequity. Why wasn't I brought in? This house got brought in. And so we really, if we're going to bring anybody in, it needs a really standardized approach, and it needs to offset any sort of cost. There's no reason why somebody right next door that's in the town should be paying higher property taxes for virtually the same service. So, and if you have any feedback on that, I'll pose it as a question to you, Jeff, if you have any feedback on what I just said.
No question? When we've heard over the last couple of years on Frisco's long-range water planning, refresh my memory if you would, when we talk about town of Frisco build out and water requirements, what consideration in those projections are there for these extraterritorial requests?
In that last study that was done just last month or whenever it was, those properties are considered in one of those scenarios in that study. And I think that those were the ones that would bring you closer to hitting your cap earlier. But you know, there's so many variables in that. And if we're going to try to get more full-time residents in town, then of course that's going to be a lot more water use. So these are all things that you have to weigh and have to understand, and you know, staff will take any direction that you give and we'll make it happen. And should you guys decide to permit these two to come on the water system, it's got to be done by resolution. So we'll bring a resolution, maybe not to the next meeting, but the meeting after that. We'll do our best to do the next meeting. But yeah, but we do need to think about water rights in the future. I mean, I know you've heard me say this many times, and you have to think about 25 years down the road, 50 years down the road, 75 years. I mean, you have to think down the road, because if you run out of water, then you run out of town. And that's just the hard facts of it. So we have to be thinking down the road and making sure that we're being good stewards at this time for the great grandchildren and everybody else down the road.
What is the cost of an acre foot of water right on the market today? Like, what are we talking about in terms of, like?
You know, for a senior right that you don't necessarily have to augment, an 1 acre foot could be close to $100,000 or more, depending on its seniority, depending on its availability. I mean, that's the other issue that we have, is a lot of these senior rights, they're just not available. They're not for sale. You know, so then you end up leasing water and things like that. So, but that's something that we would come back with, because I don't have a good firm number for you on that in today's market. I know in the past when I've purchased water rights, very senior water rights for the town of Fairplay, they were around $90,000 to $100,000, you know, 12, 15 years ago for an acre foot of water.
I guess my point in asking that question is just, and I agree with the planning piece and potentially the idea of a fee, but if we're looking long-term, you know, that fee would need to be invested. It needs to keep pace with what the market is.
Yes.
And what I personally feel the water is grossly undervalued, even at $100,000 an acre foot, and it's only going to get significantly worse. If you picked up any paper about the Colorado River lately, like we're in deep trouble.
Yeah.
And so while I agree with, you know, that planning process, I'm not sure that a homeowner in Frisco Heights can really, you know, pay for that.
Sure.
So, on the flip side, I like the reasoning or the question that Melissa poses, and that is, if people want to be brought in, I think we need to have consistency. We need to have a plan across all these properties, because why would we approve Frisco Heights and not Bill's Ranch? And how do we justify that to the public? So I think it's really important that we have a plan and consistency. Frisco, I think, at least during my time on council, has like annexation is like taboo. Like, we don't want to talk about that at all. But maybe it's time we start having these conversations. And why do we have all these communities that feel like they're part of Frisco? They shop in Frisco, they pay taxes in Frisco, but they're not Frisco. And so I think, we need to have, maybe it's time we start having that conversation.
And I think that goes to the request that I said of let's just hold off on these requests and start the process of coming up with ideas to deal with these in the future. And, maybe by next summer, next spring, we could be ready to have a system to do this and do it fairly and do it right. And then, Tony had mentioned when I spoke to him about this, that in the future, a lot of these subdivisions can create their own district, if you will, or a special improvement district or something like that, where they can pay to put the water mains in to get the water to their houses instead of, private property owners like Mr. Mansfield, for example, that would have to lay several hundred feet of water main at his expense just to get water to his house. That's another idea that could be pursued by some of these neighbors and neighborhoods, and maybe they haven't thought of that yet, and maybe they will now. There's ways to do this. We don't have a true set system to make this happen. All we have is the ordinance that says all requests have to come to the town council, and it's the town council's sole discretion to yes or no. I mean, there's no methodology to it. All they do is, like some of these folks, just write an email to the town manager. Ask me, they contact me, how do I do this? Well, you got to go to council, talk to the town manager, write a letter of request, it goes to council, I present it, goes from there. So, maybe we, unfortunately for some of these folks, take a little bit of time on our end to come up with a system, have Thad, we all get together and come up with a way to do this more efficiently, if you will, and more equitable. So, I'm more than willing to do that.
Thanks, Jeff. We're gonna go with Andy and then we'll get over to you.
Thanks, Jeff. We can't be one-offing all this stuff. I think annexation should be always on the table as part of the conversation, but particular one-off houses in these areas, can they annex themselves into Frisco without the rest of the neighborhood being in Frisco? Because to get them all to sign on board, as far as I understand, costs too much on all sides. But it should be on there. We have the people, we have the process, or we have the people, we have the product. We don't have the process. We need the process. We can't just guess and arbitrarily give out our water rights, because our water rights are finite. And as far as I understand it, for say Lake Hill, when Dillon is giving water rights to something outside of their district, they're charging 1.5 times per acre foot, right? Per house. And I'm with you, what are the possibilities of buying senior water rights in the future?
Sure.
Because the thing is if we bank money to be able to buy rights, once we hit our cap, are they going to be there?
Sure.
Are they going to be twice as much, 10 times as much? Are they even going to be there? And then in which case, once we've expanded with Lake Hill and once we've annexed a bunch of areas and/or people come online or people keep requesting this, when do we hit our cap? And so I hate to say that there's just not enough information here for us to say that we can do this. Because we know where our water rights are at. And I think there's too many missing pieces in order to be able to take on one particular house, right? We need an overall process That covers the whole thing. And I'm totally with Jeff as far as, we need to, let's take a step back and make the process and, make it something that would work. We're gonna keep coming up against
Yes.
this, and future councils should have direction instead of having to be giving direction every single time it comes up.
Yep.
That's where I'm at.
Thanks, Andy.
Tony? Involved in other annexations, and the general rule with annexation studies is that residential property is not paid for itself. That's your major source of revenue. Rule of thumb is commercial property, industrial property, more than pay for itself. So it's very lucrative for communities to annex commercial industrial areas. It's usually a lot leader if you're annexing residential areas, particularly in an environment such as ours, where almost 65% of our revenue comes from sales tax. In most communities, property tax can be 40–50%. That's not true of Frisco. So these are still consumers. I would imagine they're consuming and buying within the Frisco town limits, so they're contributing. It may not change your opinion, but I don't think annexation in general would demonstrate that residential property is worth acquiring. It will actually cause you to subsidize the service to them. It will cost the town more, not less. Now you could look at the idea Jeff has talked about, can also potentially increase the multiplier factor. Now 1.5 you want. I know one of the properties in question here literally has disruption of water. They have a low water table, so they literally at times don't get water. I hate to be in that position, especially if you're trying to sell a property. You have to admit to a seller or a buyer that you may have disruption of water to your house. So I think there are some extenuating circumstances in these applications. And maybe we need to look at it on a bigger outlook. We can do that, but that's not going to happen overnight.
A lot of these requests are the reason they're gonna be coming, and they've been coming more frequently, is most of these wells, to my knowledge, in these areas like Frisco Heights and the Wyborg and Bill's Ranch, they're shallow wells. They're not necessarily deep like the town's wells are 200+ feet deep. These wells are 20, 30, 40 feet deep, drilled, way back when. And the water table, especially this time of year and all the way through winter and into spring before spring runoff, that water table is dropping, and then everybody's got their straw in there and they're pulling water out, and that just drops it even more, which then also degrades the quality of the water, because you start getting stagnant water, if you will, and it starts getting very iron concentrated, and then people are seeing rust in their water and things like that. So these are going to keep coming as long as we're still dealing with drought situations that we're dealing with, and the things that we're dealing with in the watershed and in the water table. They're just going to be more frequent, and I don't see that changing anytime soon. So I don't know if there's anybody online that requested this, so I don't know if you want to hear from them at all, but I'm sure you've probably heard enough from me for now.
I was gonna say, let's open up public comment, and perhaps hear from the requesters.
See, it looks like you're on. Yep, Julie, you're on. We can hear you.
Yeah, well, we're one of the ones who requested. I just wanted to mention that we're here and listening. I don't necessarily have any questions. Some of these points are really things that we weren't aware of. And so it's insightful for us to be aware of some of the issues that the town has and that you're looking at that weren't necessarily considerations when we're looking at our personal situation. And we do have a shallow well, and we have an accessory apartment. And so our well's quite taxed, which is why we requested to tie in. And we actually have a tap on our property that was put in place when that water main was run. So there's a number of properties in here that have taps off of the water main on our properties, just of note for you guys to know. Yeah, we did pay for them.
You paid a tap, did you pay a tap fee or just pay to have those taps put in? The stub outs?
We did have to pay to have those stub outs put on. And then, and I don't know how this plays in, but we are required and currently using Frisco sewer services.
Yes, yes.
So we kind of have a mix happening.
Ma'am, do you know what year that was done? Because I am not aware of any taps in that neighborhood. So this is news to me, but I'm willing to absolutely look into it. And if you paid more than just having the pipe installed, so to speak, and you paid a tap fee, an EQR tap fee to the town whenever this was done, then this is an entirely different conversation.
I don't
And that's why
honestly.
I'm not aware of this, so.
Yeah, it was a long time ago. And when that water main was run, each property owner was asked, do you want to pay X amount of dollars? And they put the stubs in, there's water shutoffs. Ours was just recently marked by one of the Frisco Water employees that we know. He came out and sprayed it and marked it on the road. But I'd have to dig way back to figure out how much we paid, and I don't honestly know.
Well, let me save you some time and let me do my homework. And I will look through the files and see if there are tap fees paid for these properties, because this is entirely new information to me. So if there were tap fees paid back in the day when this was done, then like I said, this is a whole different conversation. However, if you just paid to have the physical pipe put in for future purposes, then we still have to talk. But yeah, sorry, I'm at a loss for words, so.
I wish I had more information on that piece, and I don't
We will have
recall.
that
I
information in our
apologize.
files. If there were tap fees paid and there are EQRs assigned to these properties by address, we will have that information.
Okay.
Something to say.
Now you got some follow-up?
No, I had it earlier on the annexation questions, but the manager said essentially what I was going to say. My example of the losing proposition of annexing residential property without any commercial is, as everyone knows, Frisco's property taxes are negligible to start with. By adding nothing more than police protective services and having Frisco be the first responding agency and the agency that would be issuing citations and our municipal court handling matters out of that neighborhood, I expect those services alone would exceed revenues from property taxes in those neighborhoods. Thanks.
Thanks, Thad. Any other public comment?
If there's anybody else online, please raise your hand. I'm not seeing anybody.
No further public comment. We'll close public comment and open up any council comments.
I've got an article in front of me here from 2019 where they're talking about the city of Greeley requiring developers to buy water and dedicate it to the city, or developers can pay the city $31,000 per acre foot in lieu of bringing in so-called wet water. And then in 2000, any given year since 2011, Colorado has seen roughly 900 acre feet of water sell at 20,000 acres or higher. Of course, it doesn't speak to the quality of the water.
Sure.
But this is difficult, and I would really eagerly anticipate a process where we can be more accommodative, but I would not unless the wet water was replaced. And much like the conversation we had about Lake Hill, this is difficult to say, and I'm really not trying to be adversarial, but while you're in Summit County, to me, this is a Summit County water problem. It's not a town of Frisco water problem. So, you know, and I would think that Summit County would be in a position to maybe explore a program much like we're starting to anticipate right now. And it seems to make sense that if we were going to be more, have a more accommodative policy, one of the things we could entertain would be within our water fund is an actual portfolio of wet water that we acquire. And then, you know, in anticipation of these one-offs, prelude to any kind of annexation action, right? If it's the kind of asset that we can reasonably acquire and reasonably sit on with a reasonable expectation that it might appreciate and not depreciate, then we could have something there. And then when this happens, people can just buy wet water from us, done. And it would be whatever the price is of wet water. And then, you know, we have it, we hold it. We can always get rid of it if we don't need it. And at the prices we're looking at, it would be something that we could fold into that plan and see, does that help us be more accommodative? And do we have the cash in the water fund to sit on wet water? So that when this comes to us, we can go, yeah, this is the going rate. Now, difficulty is, of course, is anticipating what kind of further interest this would engender in people wanting to, if that's the bar to get over, I don't know, but let's, for example, use these rates, that would be, you know, let's go $10,000 for a third of an acre. You know, again, depends on the quality of the water and how that kind of fits in our augmentation plan, right, Jeff?
Yep.
So, and how that's kind of adjudicated over the life of having the water, which is beyond, hopefully I won't be here, and maybe my kids will have to deal with that to some degree, or not, hopefully not deal with it. But I think that has to be part of it. I think if we want to have these kind of, if we want to be the agency that because they're here, really sound great, so it is so close to us, we want to be more accommodative, then we have to have a plan that maybe has a couple different ideas. So, because who knows how long it will take them to go out and acquire it, and the legal fees involved in acquiring, I don't know, I never.
It would be very, I think that would be a very difficult process for a private homeowner to go out and acquire their own water rights.
It could be something we
yeah.
have in our bank. We could be accommodating these kind of things because we would have funds, it wouldn't come out of our, necessarily out of our original water. And I don't know, I'm just thinking off the top of my head, so I have no idea if I'll live or not.
And how long can we sit on, can we bake? I mean, there's trouble in baking the water too, right? Like beyond the rights we have today, like we can't just buy up a bunch of water rights that we don't immediately.
As a municipality, you can.
Okay.
Yeah, the whole idea of, and Thad can probably know this better than I do, but there was a court case a while back where municipalities can bank their water and not use it and not have statement of beneficial use on it and not have it be taken away or somebody come and aggressively take it or try to buy it from us. But I'll let Thad speak to that a little more.
I will simply say that's correct, and I would defer to our water attorney for more detail.
Sure.
But you're right. The concept of beneficial use in Colorado water law is different for municipalities than it is for a private user.
Okay, Andy?
And then I would almost just end it with, in order to determine what it is we need to retain a water engineer. Because
We have one.
Oh, we do?
Yeah, the people that did the study for you, we have them. We can get them back on board with this. You know, I don't know what it will cost, but we'll certainly come up with a plan and come up with a scope of work, if you will, and get with our water attorney and with our water rights engineer and see what we can come up with. I can't tell you when we come back to you with that, but we will figure something out. On a real quick side note, you mentioned the Colorado River and what's happening, and I think it's beneficial to let council know that the town of Frisco donated 200 acre feet of water from our Wolford Mountain rights that we don't use as a one-time donation to be released into the Colorado River to help with the endangered aquatic species down on the section of river between Grand Junction, Fruta and all that. So that release will be happening here in the next, I just got the letter today from the U.S. Bureau of Reclamation that they are okay with that and that they will do it. So we are trying to do our part to help the riparian habitat down there on the lower Colorado. So.
I think what I heard here was that we need a more comprehensive approach and we're not prepared today to runoffs at the moment. And so.
Yeah, so from all of us, I think, and Melissa included, right? I think the direction is let's start working on a plan to work through these requests with a systematic process.
Yes, sir. I'll get to work on it right away and see what we can come up with as far as a scope and we'll get to work on it. Sounds like a good winter project. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Jeff. I'm sorry? Right. And Julie, I see you're still on there and I don't see the other applicant in the room or online. Is that correct, Deborah? Okay. So Julie, do you understand what our conversation just ended on?
Yes, the intent is to work on trying to figure out how to process these applications as in a more formatted way, I guess.
Yeah, I think you said it well. You're not the only ones coming to us with this request. And because it was written such a long time ago, there is not a process in place. So to be fair and equitable to everyone in that process, we're asking Public Works to come forward with a program to process these requests.
In the meantime, though, I will look into your tap and find out if
Okay.
you are owed anything by the town of Frisco, because I just don't know that. So I will
Okay.
begin that search first thing tomorrow morning when I can get into the records and look for it and see what we've got. And I'll be sure to let you know. I have your email address and I will be in touch with you.
Thank you, Jeff.
Thank you guys for tuning in and giving us the input that you have tonight.
Just one thing to mention, just so that you're aware, it's extremely hard to hear you. Some of you are better. You're the head speaker is really easy to hear, but the other members of the council are not as easy.
Thank you very much for that. We're working through that technology thing. We appreciate it.
Us too.
Yeah, I get it. Thank you. That's actually very helpful. Yeah. With that, we'll close item number 1 and move on to item number 2 in new business. Let me make sure I have the right ordinance in front of me.
Is 21-11.
Great. So agenda item number 2 is Town of Frisco Ordinance 21-11, an ordinance levying general property tax for the year 2021 to help defray the cost of governing for the town of Frisco, Colorado for the year 2022 budget year.
Good evening, council. Thanks for having me. Ordinance 20-21 does state our county assessed value of $264.7 million. Our current mill levy is 0.798 mills. That calculation works out to be $211,253. This money goes into our general fund for general operating expenses in 2022. We just need your approval to have me authorize the mill levies by Summit County by December 15th, 2021.
Thanks for that. And with that, we'll open up to any public comments. Seeing none, we'll move on to any council comments. Maybe a motion.
First reading ordinance, and I have it at 21. Ordinance 21-11, ordinance levying general property taxes for the year 2021. Colorado for 2022.
Motion has been made and seconded. Please call the question.
Aronson absent. Burley. Fallon. Held.
Yes.
Incan,
Yes.
Sherburne,
Yes.
Mortensen, absent.
That closes agenda item number 2 and moves us on to agenda item number 3, an ordinance 21-12, an ordinance appropriating sums of money to the various funds and spending agencies in the amount and for the purposes as set forth below for the town of Frisco, Colorado for the 2022 budget year.
Well, thank you again. If you add up all of these expenses per fund, we have a total operating budget of $41.9 million. Well, that includes roughly $928,000 transferred from the general fund into the capital fund. All of these expenses, you've gone over with your one-on-one meetings, as well as approved them in your work session. Any changes you wanted to make to the budget, we took into account, and these expenses reflect that right now. Beginning fund balance estimated going into 2022 is $37.3 million. We have roughly $25.8 million in revenues. Added or subtracted that out from the expenses of $41.9 million. We end 2022 with a total fund balance of $22.1 million. The big changes in these particular funds, the general fund has gone up 11% in 2022. The capital improvement fund drops 56% in fund balance. The SCHA fund drops 70% in fund balance, and the Marina fund drops 75% in fund balance. And this can mainly be attributed to all the capital projects that you all have approved.
Thank you for that. I'm gonna do quickly public comments. The public comments? Council.
Mr. Incan, I would like to make a motion to approve the first reading of ordinance 21-12, an ordinance appropriating sums of money to various funds and spending agencies in the amount and for the purposes as set forth below for the town of Frisco, Colorado, for the 2022 budget year.
Motion has been made and seconded. Please call a question.
Burley. Allen.
Yes.
Held.
Yes.
Incan.
Yes.
Sherburne,
Yes.
Mortensen, absent. Aronson, absent. Thank you.
And that will close agenda item number 3. Everyone's good with that.